Okay, so as promised a few weeks ago, I'm going to jump in here and review some Blaxploitation titles on Blu-ray that were put out through the label Code Red, William Olson's label, which has a lot of obscurities and low-budget treasures and cult oddities in their catalog. First Code Red release that I ever picked up was the DVD of Messiah of Evil, The Second Coming, which is a really nice remastered, complete version of that. And I have since replaced it, upgraded to the Blu-ray of that. But a few years ago, in one fell swoop, I picked up 5 titles that were Blaxploitation, or no, six titles that were Blaxploitation that were fairly obscure or harder to come by that they had in their catalog on Blu-ray. So their first and only turn on Blu-ray. Of those 6, one is called Lord Shango, and I reviewed that on Halloween, so I'm not going to go back over that one. Another one is QUADROON, which definitely was by far the weakest of all of these movies. It was, kind of a set during antebellum Blaxploitation, as the title implies. There's a racially mixed heroine, and it was kind of in the exploitative mold of Mandingo and Drum and films like that. It was pretty lame. I'm keeping it in the library for posterity's sake, but it's one of the more obscure Blaxploitation titles that there are, and that's why I wanted to scoop it up. I liked the idea of a quarter black slave or young lady on the plantation who was a quadroon, literally like a quarter of black blood, kind of similar to some of the Creoles in New Orleans, who were really racially mixed in the 19th century. So I thought it'd be a cool idea, and I thought, well, at least it would be interesting. It might be kind of slack in production, but I really had no idea how slack the production was going to be and how kind of dull it was overall. So I guess that's my review of that one. I'm not holding it up or adding it to my list today, but I've mentioned it. The next one that I'm not reviewing today is called Top of the Heap. It's written, directed, edited by, and starring Christopher St. John. This one is an odd one. It's a pretty dark, inscrutable kind of film, and I've seen it all the way through twice. I started watching it again in order to prepare for this segment. I got about 2/3 of the way through, and I decided I didn't really want to talk about it. I thought it was a little too, it was an ambitious attempt. This St. John plays a black cop. So, this is the early 70s. So, there's all this racial tension, much like today. And so black cop was considered by, a lot of blacks as a sellout, a motherfucker, Uncle Tom. And the character is assailed verbally by some black guys that he tries to bust on some drug charges, and the guys are incredulous that this guy is trying to bust them and that he won't take any of their money. But I can't say he's a really noble character. He's really troubled, and he has a lot of strange nightmares, a lot of them imagining himself as an astronaut, and then also imagining himself filming a movie in which he plays an astronaut. He's a really negative kind of energy character. and not, at least to the point I got in the rewatch, not to the point where you're like, oh yeah, man, he's angry. This makes sense. I mean, I'm on his side. I don't know. He was mean to everybody. His wife, and then he has a mistress played by Paula Kelly, who was in Spook is Out by the Door and Omega Man, not Omega Man, Soylent Green, um, several other notable blaxploitation movies. She was a dancer and an actress. Paula Kelly, she's never looked as good as in Top of the Heap. She's just gorgeous. Her hair looks great, and she's playing the guitar and improvising, singing, and she's got talent in that area too. She passed away only a couple of years ago, but talk about an underrated female talent from that era. I think she should be talked about more. She just always had a kind of a energy about her that made you want to watch her. So I didn't finish off Top of the Heap. Maybe I'll go in depth on that some other time in a blaxploitation, various blaxploitation special. So let's talk about the ones I am talking about. What I am going to actually review. Okay, this is a Baby Needs a New Pair of Shoes, commonly known as Jive Turkey. Since that's a long title, I may put Jive Turkey as the title in the credits here in the video. This stars this cat named Paul Harris. This guy here is probably well into middle age at the time he made this film, and I think he's probably most remembered by just your average blaxploitation fans as the guy who plays in the Mac. He plays the Iceberg Slim kind of character. I think he's supposed to be blind, but he's like a prophet, kind of wise man, and he's kind of giving the wisdom down to Goldie, played by Max Julian. And, he gives him the whole rap of, anybody can control a woman's body. The key is to control her mind. And, this is just out of Iceberg Slim's kind of pimp the story of my life, which was huge at that time. But yeah, Paul Harris, this is as far as I know, this is his only big starring role. I mean, big as in he's the star. The movie wasn't really big. But I tell you, it's a nice production. It's set in the 50s, I think like 1955 or 6. And there's even a funny line in there. One of the characters says, "Come on now, it's 1956," meaning, come on, just look how far we've come with racial matters. This shouldn't be an issue. It's 1956. I'm thinking 8 years before the civil rights law. It's like 1956. It's the cutting edge. This is good as we're going to get with race relations in America. Well, the thing is, this guy is on top. Our main guy. His name is I want to remember his name because it's really a trip. Pasha Jabbar, which is not his real name. They tell the character's birth name, and then he has another nickname, but they sometimes call him the Pasha. But Pasha Jabbar, he is Hakeem Jabbar. That's it. Pasha Hakeem Jabbar is just an indelible character. He's got confidence. He's kind of strutting around. He's very cool. He's like the ultimate kind of black gangster guy. You would wish you'd seen this guy playing this kind of character in the modern era in blaxploitation films. I mean, for all I know, he could in a movie that I'm not familiar with. I have to do a little digging on Mr. Paul Harris, but he's incredible in this film. And basically, he has grown up with this mob figure played by the only kind of semi-name actor, Frank DeCovo, who's in the movie. And that guy is a mafioso, and they came up together, kind of busting each other's balls, so to speak, and always kind of a friendly rivalry, but it led to a lot of resentment. And what's happened now is that his buddy in the mafia wants him to turn over his very lucrative, Pasha's very lucrative numbers racket to his Italian friend. He is very reluctant to do this, and because basically he's been running a good, clean operation, illegal, but clean as in, he hasn't been involved in very much in the way of drugs or prostitution or killing. So he's doing pretty fine, and the numbers is kind of a way of life for him, and it's a way for people he knows to kind of get out of the ghetto, get out of poverty, and he has several loyal people who work for him. One guy is named the Sweet Man. Forgot the name of that actor, but Sweet Man is kind of a booster for Pasha through the whole movie, and he's helping him, uh, trying to help him keep the mafia at bay. Because one of the things that our mafioso guy contends is that there is a mole, a double agent, a spy within Pasha's ranks, high in his ranks, who's going to bring him down uh, if he doesn't capitulate to the mob. Um, of course, there's a huge twist that doesn't come until the very, very ending, almost the very last shot. You realize who the spy was. And I think they intended it to have more impact than it did. But that's because I think they intended you to be a little more invested in some of the characters than I actually was. I was mainly down with Pasha. I mean, I did like one young guy with a leather jacket, and he was bringing up some kids, including his little brother, on the streets and giving them money. And he was kind of mistrusted by Pasha at first, but then he ends up becoming very loyal and takes a fall, like a permanent fall, for the gang, for the numbers gang. And I liked that guy. I think his name was Nathan. I could be wrong. But anyway, his little brother was like Billy, and Billy's like comes upon his older brothers all bloody and deceased, and nobody wanted the kids to see that, and that's the Pasha is like thinking of the community, the black community. He's always in control. He's always aware of what he's doing, and he's always making moves to stay on top. His confidence is amazing, and he employs it with his woman too. I mean, he's Mr. Smooth in the bedroom with this gal. But in any case, this movie's worth it just to see Mr. Paul Harris playing this Hakeem Jabbar character. He truly is a character. I'm not sure who wrote this. I think it pretty much is original screenplay. It's directed by William Brame. It says original story by Howard and Elizabeth Ransom. And there's a lot of Ransoms who work on the crew, so I guess the whole family Ransom worked on this production. This says also that this special features a trailer and brand new 2016 high def master from 35 millimeter archival print. It looks good. It's not like squeaky clean, but it's nice. It's gritty, and for these kind of movies, this level of obscurity, I can handle gritty look, even on Blu-ray. I think it's perfect. So anyway, I really recommend this. Baby Needs a New Pair of Shoes, or Jive Turkey, which is the on-screen title of this print. It took me a long time to track that down. I happened to find a Jive Turkey print of it, not a very good one, on YouTube about 2016, and I watched that. And so it was kind of cool when I came across this being one of Code Red's titles. I decided I had to snap it up. The next item here is a 2-in-1 deal. It's the Fred Williamson Signature Collection, volume number 3. I don't know what volumes 1 or 2 had. I'm thinking maybe something like Mean Johnny Barrows or one of the Jesse Crowder movies. I could be wrong. But basically, it looks as though Mr. Mean is like the main feature and Joshua is like the follow-up feature. It really should be reversed. Mr. Mean is pretty slack. Fred directed it himself, and it's not in the level of stuff like Mean Johnny Barrows. It's not as well done. It's got a lot of cliches. This character, Mr. Mean, he's, whatever the job is, as it says on here, if the price is right, the job is right. And that's basically what he tells everybody through the whole movie. I'll do whatever if, you give me the money. Fred's very cool. He's very smooth. He's the man, as usual. Plot is kind of disjointed to almost the point of non-existence. The movie doesn't really start picking up till the last reel. And Fred, part of this was shot in Italy, maybe all of it was shot in Italy. So it has an Italian crew and some Italian supporting actors. And one of them is this beautiful woman that he falls in love with, and I'm not sure. I haven't quite caught the name of this lady. I did when I watched it, but I've already forgotten. And her name is not on the box. The only person who's credited that is really kind of known besides Fred is Lou Castel. So everyone else is kind of unknowns, including someone named Raymond Harmstorff and Crippy Yokard. Man, so those are memorable names. But this woman's awesome. So she's kind of his lover, and then you kind of think she double crosses him, and that kind of intrigue's really cool. I mean, there's some nice scenes with Fred. The ending's kind of funny. There's a little twist. You kind of think Fred is finally going to meet his end, because, you know, when Fred was doing these films through his own company, Po' Boy Productions, he had these, or when he would, you know, farm out his talents to other people, he would generally have these kind of mandates that he would set down to the producers, that he had to, you know, win the fight in the end against the bad guy, couldn't be killed off, had to get the woman. And the movies of his that I think are the most interesting are the ones where one or more of those things go afoul. It just brings a little more dimension to Fred as like a real person. I mean, one of the few movies where he's truly kind of an invincible kind of character that I really love is That Man Bolt, where he plays Jefferson Bolt, who's an international courier. He's kind of a black James Bond kind of ish character. A great movie, really entertaining, and in that one you kind of get it, because, you know, Bond is kind of that way too. You know, kind of a polymath, and you know, he can make his way out of any situation, whether he's doing something, you know, with some gadget, or he's fighting his way out of it, or shooting his way out of it, or seducing some woman. Bond has always got a way to come out on top, and that's the same true of Jefferson Bolt. Which, by the way, there was a character that Lynn Wein and Bernie Wrightson created for their initial run on Swamp Thing comics in the early 70s, a black guy called Jefferson Bolt. And whereas I haven't found any distinct documentation, definite, there's a lot of speculation, and I'm going to go ahead and add to the speculation that Lynn Wein saw That Man Bolt, the movie, because that comic came out right after that movie had come and gone. And you know, some of my friends who do creative mythography and such things, like my friend Sean Lee Levin and Win Scott Eckert, and some of these characters, they are characters, they're people, but I mean, they are characters if you meet them. But they're experts on characters, and some of us have kind of speculated that the two Jefferson Bolts are the same character, if you subscribe that all these fictional characters live in the same continuity, a la Philip Jose Farmer's Walt Newton Family, or Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, etc. Those kind of metafictional constructs. But anyway, I always thought that was interesting. I hope That Man Bolt will come on Blu-ray at some point soon. But, you know, Mr. Mean, he's not on the level of Jefferson Bolt. He's a little too laid back. And like I said, there isn't much cleverness till the end, and some of the direction's awkward. It's not bad. It's just kind of run-of-the-mill. Fred's done better. He's done worse. You know, I'm not going to completely knock him. But the good thing is, what redeems this whole affair on this Blu-ray is the fact that the second film, which really should be the lead film, Joshua, was also made by Po' Boy Productions a couple of years after Mr. Mean. And it has an interesting cast, and Fred did not direct it. He wrote it, and he produced it and starred in it as Joshua. And but a guy named Larry Spangler directed it. I'm not familiar with this man, but his direction it's just a bit different than I think how Fred would approach it. I mean, it's definitely kind of low budget, but it's a Western, and it's not a spaghetti Western. It's American, but it has the flavor of a spaghetti Western. And Fred was even in some spaghetti Westerns, like Take a Hard Ride where he's quite good, by Antonio Margheriti. But Joshua it has a lot of interesting things that distinguish it from a lot of the po' boy productions. First of all, it's a Western, it's a period piece. Um, Second of all, it's very grim. It's kind of dark, and Fred is kind of remorseless. I mean, he's a badass as always, but in this one, you actually see him suffer a little, and you kind of worry about his fate a few times, which you don't do in Mr. Mean, except kind of near the end, but it's a fake out. But um, so you're not sure, and there is no woman for him to get. He is pursuing a woman, but not for romantic purposes. Essentially, Joshua is a Civil War veteran. He fought for, I guess he fought for the North. Yeah, I guess that's the idea. He fought for the North, and there is a character who is kind of a middle-aged man who has like a farm, and Joshua's mother Martha is the maid on the farm. I guess post-slavery, since now slaves have been freed. So where does Joshua go? Well, he's going to go and see his mom and reunite, and then they're going to try to figure out what kind of life post-war, post-slavery they're going to lead. This man who employs his mom has recently married. He has a mail order bride who is a gorgeous woman, played by Brenda Venus, who I didn't really know that much about until I rewatched this movie and did a little research. And she's an interesting character in her own right. She was first became well known as being Henry Miller's final lover in his 80s, and she was in her 20s. This was in the very early 70s, and she was kind of his muse. And then she kind of went on and she dated various other men, creative types. She was in this film. She did Playboy Centerfolds. She wrote a book, I believe, in the 80s called How to Seduce a Man, or basically a foolproof seduction manual. And it became a mega bestseller. And she's probably still getting royalties from that one. She's still alive. She's about 70 now. She looks about 35 or 40, albeit a bit a plastic surgery casualty. But I mean, as far as just her body being toned, her face being unwrinkled, and her hair being perfect, etc., she looks much, much younger than she really is. She doesn't really look like she did in Joshua or during the 70s and 80s. She really looks kind of a little fake. I mean, her boobs have gotten incrementally larger, and so have her lips over the years. Similar thing happened with Mamie Van Doren, who I think is still among the living. I've not seen a recent picture of Mamie Van Doren, but when I was on MySpace, I was friended with Mamie Van Doren. I kept up with her religiously, and at that time, mind you, this is the MySpace days. At that time, she was in her early 80s, and she looked about 50, like a really exotic, sexy 50, albeit, again, a bit enhanced surgically. Um, these are just women who are never going to let their looks, in their opinion, or what people perceive as their looks or how they want them to look, they're never going to let them go. So they're not going to age naturally in a natural beauty sense. They're going to kind of not age, but unnaturally, if that makes sense. So I'm fascinated with that kind of thing because I'm wondering, like, what is their love life like? I mean, I know they're famous people, probably wealthy. I mean, neither of those women are particularly well known now among the current generations, but they've had their day, and they certainly still live opulent lifestyles and still do lots of cheesecake posing. And I'm wondering, what is their love life like? I mean, is their regimen to look a certain way? Do they do it like 24/7 endlessly to maintain this appearance until their dying day? It's hard to say. I mean, what are they going to look like when they're in their 90s or older? Because they'll certainly live longer. I would think. Maybe some bionics or cybernetics might come into play there, some genetic engineering of some kind. But anyway, Brenda Venus plays the bride, the mail order bride of this old guy, and a little pack of rednecks. There's four of them. I guess they're I think they might be Civil War veterans too. If so, they fought for the South, but they're kind of like yokels, and they're really bandits and troublemakers. And they come on to this guy's farm, and then begin coming on to Brenda Venus, and decide they're going to take her along, and so they shoot the husband and also gun down Joshua's mother, Martha. So by the time Joshua makes it to the farm, the only one left on the farm is the husband, and he's recovering from it being shot. But Martha's gone, and they've taken his wife and cleared out. So Joshua grimly and fastidiously hunts these people, just steadfast. And it's very meticulous. It's very purposeful. There's a synthesizer riff soundtrack that kind of repeats over and over in different tempos. And I really like it's kind of ominous. It kind of gives it kind of a unworldly feel at times. And it's pretty damn violent. And Joshua exacts revenge. Like I said, he does get hurt. There is some question as to what's going to happen to this guy, but he does make it. Along the way, he is allied with a Mexican woman played by Isela Vega, another well-known, of that period, well-known actress, who I guess might be best known for co-starring in Peckinpah's Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. At least that's what I really knew her from. She's really good in this. There's no romantic interest with Fred with either of these women. One thing that was disturbing, but it took care of itself at the end. But as you're going through the film, as these bandits are making their way, evading Fred and Joshua, and with in tow Brenda Venus, she's living it up with them. She has gone from screaming and wailing about being raped to a total convert. She loves being with them. She's constantly fucking the main leader of the gang, who's really just a piece of garbage. Occasionally letting other members of the gang still have sex with her. She's laughing it up, drinking. I mean, there's no explanation given for her turn, except maybe you're supposed to think that since she was a mail order bride to this gentleman, that he nor anyone else really knew what she was really like, and really this kind of opportunity is more of her speed, living this kind of life. So she lives by the sword and dies by the sword, alas, because at the end she does try to cop out and say, no, they made me do it. And Joshua isn't. He could care less. He's not having it. As far as he's concerned, she's one of his targets. So he's not coming to rescue her. He's coming to avenge his mom and be done with it. So anyway, I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. It just has a really downbeat, heavy vibe to it that I think distinguishes it from the other Pobler productions that I've seen. So now we're going to get on to the final, the coup de grace, the obsessed one. This one is crazy. Supposedly it was filmed in South America, I think in Guyana, and though I have read the Philippines, but that's actually not true. It was filmed, of course, in the swinging 70s, or maybe it was the late. To be honest, it might not have been the swinging 70s. It might have been slightly later. It's either the end of the 70s or early, beginning of the 80s. But it was shot in South America very cheaply. The cast is like part African American, part Hispanic, part Asiatic. It's really kind of a mixed, literally a mixed bag as far as the racial makeup. The main leading guy, character's named Tyrone Pedro, played by Mark Panday, who also wrote the screenplay. I don't know what nationality Mark Panday is. At first glance, I thought this was like an Indonesian movie, like The Killing of Satan or Mystics from Bali or something. Then I thought maybe it was a Filipino, and then I found out it's South American, and it really has. It's hard to place where it takes place or where it's filmed. Um, there's one or two token, white women in it, but pretty much other than that, it's a multiracial cast. Uh, what's it about? Tyrone Pedro. It's kind of this hapless guy, this dyed-in-the-wool romantic who gets married. He has all these flashbacks because when the movie starts, he's breaking out of prison, and then you see through flashbacks why he's in prison. And first, you see his idyllic courtship and marriage of his wife, and then you see that a gang composed of three hooligans, or four hooligans maybe. One's white, one's black. He's the leader, kind of Jimi Hendrix-ish attired guy, and then a Hispanic guy and an Asian guy, and they all, well, it's pretty horrible. Basically, they come upon our couple and they beat him down and they brutally rape and then kill Tyrone Pedro's bride. I've read a lot of reviews of this movie as being really bad and slack and so bad it's good, and I agree. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's incredibly entertaining. It's surreally ineptly made, but it just has a certain atmosphere with the music and the kind of bad sound and just the outrageous action scenes that are just, clearly over the top. It looked totally improvised, no choreography, just down and dirty. And I think it is kind of a bad movie in that sense. It's definitely not a good movie. However, a couple of people who were slagging on it on IMDb said that they even thought the rape scene was funny because her acting was so bad. And I'm sorry, it was not funny. I mean, her acting, I don't know if you call it bad. I mean, she's screaming at the top of her lungs. This really painful wailing, and it really sounds like she's in agony. And these guys are just gang raping her, and I don't know, it's pretty brutal. I'm not sure how anyone could really find that amusing or dismissible, no matter how badly shot it was. But still, to each their own, I guess. So Tyrone Pedro, like our man in Joshua over here, he begins stalking these characters for revenge once he escapes from prison, and he meets a woman who is a good ally of his, a young black woman, and they have kind of a chemistry. And then along the way, he's hanging out at this club, and he, as it says on the back of the box, during his quest, he encounters a sadistic pimp, Sugar Cane, played by Donald Jones, who walks into Tyrone's path with an attitude. And yes, Sugar Cane, he's the character that is usually focused on in articles or reviews of this movie or trailers, like clips on YouTube, what have you. But he's really just a one scene, kind of one note character. I mean, he's kind of the main overt blaxploitation element of this film. I mean, Tyrone Pedro is the actor and character do look to be part black, but and like I said, the main villain is black, but Sugar Cane is kind of what gives it that flavor, even though that's only a small portion of the film. The film is just kind of one ridiculous set piece after another. It's just him chasing down these guys, gradually killing them off one by one. I mean, they knocked the guy down, beat him, knocked him out, raped and killed his wife with ease. But then when he goes one-on-one with these guys, they're nothing. I mean, he just opens up on them, and they don't have a chance. I mean, only one guy really gives him much of a match. And then he's pretty brutal. I mean, he castrates one guy and hangs him upside down to bleed out. And, there's all kinds of crazy shit in this movie. I don't know how else to put it. So, yeah, I felt the need to do this review because just for something a little bit different. I love blaxploitation movies. I love the vibe of them. I love the flavor. I love the era. I love the look. I love the music. They're classic. I mean, it's another experience that is totally different than ones I had growing up or that I was familiar with in the 70s, though I was very, very young in the 70s. Um, these movies can be really profound, uh, or they can be outrageously ridiculous. There's a whole spectrum, and every kind of subgenre fits in. I mean, there's blaxploitation horror, uh, westerns, as we've found, dramas, political thrillers, comedies, romances, action, martial arts, uh, you name it. I don't know if there's too many blaxploitation science fiction movies, but there are some horror ones that kind of verge on. Or, stuff like Abar, the first Black Superman. That's kind of science fiction, and I guess Blackenstein. Um, so really, you can't go wrong. I mean, I've seen almost 200 of these movies now, and I still have a wish list of a few dozen left. I've seen the vast majority of them, and I've seen the majority of the notable entries, the most notable entries, most famous or infamous, notorious entries in the cycle. Um, and I'm just an eternal fan. So probably we'll come back to this. I don't have an enormous collection of blaxploitation on Blu-ray. I have quite a number on DVD. Some of which I'm gradually selling, but some of the more hard to find ones or hard to replace ones are I'm going to keep for a while. So I've really ferreted out a lot of titles in this effort to collect these. So on Blu-ray, I have these 6 Code Red discs, but I also have a few other titles like Superfly, Foxy Brown, Dolomite, Uptight. There's quite a few, not a huge amount. Um, I actually watched Uptight recently again. I may review that at some point because that was a pretty interesting film. Anyway, I'm going to probably sign off now. No, I'll definitely sign off now. Please subscribe. Please give me a thumbs up if you found anything worthwhile in this video. Comment if you're so inclined, if you want to correct my mistakes or just, generally comment on my lackadaisical delivery. Whatever. I appreciate it. So I'll be back soon with more vids and more Blu-rays and etc.